Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends, and welcome to JCB Live. Bienvenue à JCB Live. Aujourd'hui and today we're going to be bicultural at the highest level because we're very fortunate that we're going to have our ambassador, Ambassador Philippe Étienne, our Excellence of France, who is the ambassador to the United States. We're thrilled because he has an incredible background. You will realize that he has done the best studies there is in France. He's an agrégé of mathematics, so the highest degree you could possibly find. Only speaks 5 languages, so I hope he keeps learning a few more. He's been serving not only France, but Europe as well. And our president asked him to come to the United States to lead the oldest friendship in the world, the United States and France. We're very excited to have him. It's a great honor. It's an enormous privilege. And he really embodies the Franco-American vibration, friendship, and unity. So I'm going to pop the cork because he knows a lot about wine, because in addition to this incredible background and all the posts he's had around the world, he knows how to make wine. And more importantly, he's a great palate. So Ambassador, welcome. You see, I need to toast, Ambassador, to you and your fantastic service to France. Congratulations and thank you. Cheers.
Well, thank you, Jean-Charles, for having me. And it reminds me of my visit in California in January last year. You have a bit exaggerated my knowledge about wine and about everything, by the way, but indeed, I have a family among the French wine growers, and it's my pride. But I'm not a specialist of wine, and I was so happy to get some fresh knowledge when I visited the Napa Valley, and I visited you in particular.
Well, we were very thrilled, and the region still speaks about it because I believe, Excellence, you were one of the very few who came all the way to Napa to give us pre-COVID a little bit of impulse of great energy.
It was another time, but I will come again after COVID, I'm sure.
Yes, we look forward to it. So, Ambassador, you've had a phenomenal history in the Foreign Service. What inspired you to go into that field after such glamorous and intellectual studies? École Normale, and obviously the highest of l'ENA and all that. So give us why.
Well, you mentioned my love for learning foreign languages, and I wanted to discover the world, and I indeed had started studying mathematics, and I still love mathematics, but even if I forgot everything I learned in mathematics, but I was interested in working abroad, in discovering, understanding new cultures, and this is how I became a diplomat.
And what has been your most exciting, vibrant post before, of course, Washington, D.C.?
Well, it's difficult to say, and it's not because I want to be diplomat and I want to please everybody, but every experience has been in a different way fantastic. I was thrilled to be, and it was fantastic to be in Germany just before the fall of the Berlin Wall, but also years later as ambassador in Berlin, and also I loved Romania, for instance, with my family. I was ambassador in Bucharest. All my experiences, even what we call multilateral negotiations, because I was 3 times posted in Brussels, and I negotiated quite a lot in the framework of the European Union. It's another passion, another job. What is the most interesting for me in being a diplomat is that you have all those experiences. You can switch from one field of expertise to another, and I find it's really a great privilege to be a diplomat for this reason.
And by the way, how do we compare, diplomats like yourself for life, who studied diplomacy and who are the pinnacle of world relationship and diplomats who could be appointed, as it is in fact in the US, because they've been a great part of a campaign or a great support of the president's. What is the big difference, and what's your opinion on either or?
While France, like all other European diplomatic services in Europe, we have this not this tradition of political appointees. We have some exceptions, indeed, non-civil servants being appointed, but it's rare. There are really only a few exceptions. While in the US, it's part of the system. I would say that career diplomats will bring more experience of the field, and while political appointees obviously will maybe have another kind of experience and will bring this. Some of them have been business people, some of them have been in local governments and can bring also other types of experience. So each system has its positive aspects, but we must respect the traditions. And the most important, I think, when you are a diplomat, be it political appointee, career diplomat, when you are an ambassador, you must be interested by the country where you are posted. You must have the passion of understanding other cultures. And of course, you must also love your country and love serving your country.
And what are the big lessons one can learn from those incredible cultural exchanges that you witness and you create in many instances?
Well, first you learn a lot of very positive experiences, and it is one of the fascinating aspects of this job to be able to learn from others. And you learn humility, you learn a lot of positive aspects about diversity. You learn that uniformity is not the best way to get results, and in a democracy or in a community of nations, it's good to have different points of view, different traditions, different horizons, and to try to combine them through negotiations to get the best possible result for all of us. So this is, I think, the most interesting you can get from having this vocation and having this position of representing your country in another country.
So as we have wine, or I do, in front of us, we often use the expression, Our Excellence, ocean separates us, but wine unites us.
Absolutely.
Would you tell us how we could use wine to unite us, and what are your suggestions as far as the roles of wine in international relations?
The role of wine is manifold, essential. Obviously, for our French ambassador, representing the interests of the wine-producing country, but also a country known for the excellence of its wines. And wine belongs to our traditions, and wine belongs to our identity, French identity. And as you might know, Jean-Charles, the so-called gastronomic meal of the French has been put onto the list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity, which is a list of UNESCO. And to this belongs, obviously, serving good wines, the pairings between wines and food. It belongs to our culture, to our identity. And then, of course, wines are an essential way of being kind to your guests. And you expect from a French ambassador to serve good French wines, and it belongs also to our hospitality when we are ambassadors. And it's quite important, when you are negotiating and when you are in a tense, difficult period of a negotiation, the way you will honor your guests, you will serve them good wines and good food is really important, and it's expected from French ambassador. And then finally, wine, actually, especially between California and France, or the United States of France, is an incredible and powerful link of friendship. And I will not tell you, Jean-Charles, because you know it much better than I do, the role of wine and the role of California for the French wines and the role of France for Californian wines. You're the best example of one of the best examples of this link of friendship. So wine is also a link which is very strong between countries like France and the United States, but also between France and many other wine-producing nations in Latin America or on other continents. And to see that, I advise everybody to visit La Cité du Vin, the city of wine, which has been inaugurated a couple of years ago in Bordeaux. It's really fantastic because you discover the world of wine, and not only in France, and you discover all these aspects I tried to mention in a clumsy way.
Well, you mentioning it very well, and thank you for that. And you know, I'm drinking actually a Franco-American wine, a blend of both countries, as we speak. So I have a toast to what you've said. And you know, we had on our JCB Live Fred Ryan, that you know, who wrote a very famous book. He's the president of the Here We Go. Here we go. So what do you think about those wonderful toasts that made the easiness into the relations?
No, I know you had invited Fred Ryan, and we had also here in Washington the opportunity to listen to him, and I like very much his book, and it's incredibly how you see through the history of the White House the role played by toast, by wines, and what I prefer in this book is at the very beginning. It's a letter by Thomas Jefferson when he was on a buying trip, tournée in France, and he bought, I think, Sauterne, and he sends an account of the bottles he has bought. So it, as you said, France is the oldest ally of the United States. And at the very beginning, knowing that Thomas Jefferson was the ambassador of the United States to France in the 1780s, he was even there on the day of the Bastille being stormed by the French Revolution on July 14, 1789. Well, at the very beginning of our relation with great persons like Thomas Jefferson, we had already a very essential element linked with wine and a purchase of good bottles of wine. And well, the book by Frederick Ryan is fantastic. It explains very, very well this history.
Maybe we should, as I know you're very close to our President Macron and everyone back at the Élysée, it would be nice that we commission someone to write a book about the history of wine in the French Élysée.
Well, I don't know whether such a book does exist already, but we have interesting stories, not only at Élysée, but also at Quai d'Orsay, at the French Foreign Ministry, because indeed, wine and if you can imagine the state visits and the state dinners organized in the Élysée, or also such state receptions in the Quai d'Orsay. Both of them are obviously have very, very good also cave and serve the finest French wines. And it is also true that wine keeps us busy also as an important matter of our own negotiations. You know that we were very much worried by the tariffs imposed by the previous U.S. administration on the French wines in the context of the dispute, so-called Airbus-Boeing dispute. So we are very happy that these tariffs have been raised, at least temporarily have been suspended, and we hope they will not be reinstated again, because we will have succeeded in the negotiation between the US and the European Union, which shows that wines are not only an important part of our hospitality or receptions at the highest level, but also a very important part of our negotiations, because wine is also essential for our economy, for our jobs, and as I said before, for our culture.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have a toast to your talent of negotiation, because the suspension of those tariffs is a really big relief for all of us on both sides of the world, that's for sure. So,
Jean-Charles, to be frank, it was a negotiation at the level of the European Union, because it's a trade policy, and trade policy in Europe is negotiated at the level of the EU. But you can be sure that all French representatives have our ministers, in particular at my modest level as ambassador. We have worked very hard with our European colleagues to get to this result. And again, I repeat, to find a definitive solution on the disputes about sub-grants to airline manufacturing industry.
well, we all thank you for that, because the results and the outcome is what counts, and it was in a good direction. So, Excellence, as a Franco-American company, we love both sides of the world. We think they really complement one another so well. They really make each other better. Would you please be so kind to outline your view of what we have in common between the French and the Americans, and maybe what are different values that are still very valuable on both sides that make us a rich partner?
Well, fundamentally, we have common values, and first, values of democracy, of freedom, of tolerance. And this is the essential features. These are the essential features of our democracies we have to defend together in the world as it is. Because those values are not everywhere there. So it's something which remains important, which has been important throughout the history of the French-American friendship and cooperation. But then we have also in common, I think, the same interest for having a free entrepreneurship. Yes. And by the way, entrepreneur is a French word. And France, like the United States, are countries of free initiatives taken by our citizens, especially in the last years, young citizens creating startups and developing their own business based on internet and on new technologies. You can see them in San Francisco or in Silicon Valley, not far from the Napa Valley. You can see them in Los Angeles, in Boston, in Florida, in Texas, or in Atlanta, or in Chicago. Everywhere you find young French entrepreneurs, but also in other more classical, traditional fields, including wine, of course, and many others. We have, and you're an example, a good example of that. We have very, very dynamic entrepreneur, and this culture of entrepreneurship is something which unites us. Of course, we have also differences. We come from different backgrounds. We have not exactly the same organization in our society. For instance, the United States is a federal country. France has been more centralized, although we now tend to give more, to empower more our local governments, but we are not a federal country. And there are many other differences of size, of course, but also in other fields. But what unites us is much, much more important than those differences.
What are the key moments to you, because you have an incredible knowledge of history and you're in love with the two nations, the key moments of history that you would personally highlight that really brings to the forefront this wonderful friendship that we have?
Oh, I would quote 4 moments and not 2. The first moment is the American Revolution, leading to the Battle of Yorktown and the Capes Battle, between the British Navy and the French Navy, and then the Battle of Yorktown, which ended the war, the Independence War, and secured the independence of the United States. The second moment, 1 century later, would be the Statue of Liberty being donated by the French people to the United States, arriving to New York and being now on the Liberty Island as a symbol of freedom and welcoming the new Americans. The third moment will be in 1917, General Pershing arriving in France on the West Coast and bringing the American army to participate to the victory in World War I. And the fourth moment would be, of course, the D-Day in 1944, with all those young American soldiers sacrificing their lives with other young soldiers from other countries and with resistance, members of the French resistance, to give freedom back to Europe and first to liberate France.
Yeah, amazing moments of history. And I know you love nature. You're very much an advocate of our wonderful environments, and we live from it, from your family vineyards to ours and to the beautiful wines that you produce. And you've been an enormous advocate all your life in terms of the fundamental issues of climate change. Would you please address this topic a little more for us and tell us what really inspires you to continue in this direction?
Well, it's not absolutely not about me, actually. It's about our country, because France has been at the forefront of the fight for climate, especially, but not only in 2015 with the Paris Climate Accord, which was signed in December 2015, and which is now the base, not only the legal, but also the political foundation for the international action to fight against climate change. I had the opportunity to work with working with President Macron, not only on this front against climate change, but also on another battle which is linked very much with the climate one, which is biodiversity.
Yeah.
And we have seen with the pandemics and with the connection between all those challenges, human health, animal health, loss of biodiversity, change of climate, extreme weather conditions. All those things are connected and interact one with the other, and for the time being interact sometimes, unfortunately, in very dangerous ways. So I think the best way to express what is at stake is when we say, as one former Secretary General of the United Nations said, there is no planet B. When he was asked whether we have a plan B if the climate accord doesn't work, well, we have no choice. And our planet, life on our planet, and the future of mankind are really very closely connected. And we have to fight together. Our young generations, you mentioned me, but we should mention not me personally, but personally many young citizens in our countries, especially in France, maybe more my children than myself, who are much more aware than our generation about this, and who demand from our governments and in each government, each nation individually, but also all nations together, to act much more decisively against those threats. And from this point of view, of course, we welcome very much the decision of this new administration of President Biden to come back to the Paris Climate Accord, and the way the US government has organized quite rapidly a climate summit, and again acts together with the European nations to raise the ambitions of the climate goals of all emitters of greenhouse gas emissions is really to be welcomed. And we have to fight. You asked Jean-Charles about what unites us with the US. I think now this fight for the nature to stop the loss of biodiversity, to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. All this is now really, really a strong common goal, uniting the United States and France, but also all European nations. It is one of the most important common goals of the European Union and of the United States of America.
So it's a good message of hope. Then you're optimistic about the future on that topic.
Well, hope, I don't know. Yes, sure, but hope without action doesn't mean anything. The most important is to act, and we have not much time. We have not much time. We all agreed on the the Western nations and many others, we already agreed on the objective of being carbon neutral by 2050. But if we want to reach this goal in 2050, we need to be very, very quick in our actions. And I think that our president said recently, he said something like the limit, the new 2050, 2030. Now we have to concentrate on when we can do really in a short term, because otherwise it would be too late and we would never reach the carbon neutrality objective in 2050.
Yeah, absolutely. So on a more personal note, Our Excellence, you're a very busy man, naturally, specifically the ambassador to the US, one of the most incredible and active and certainly intense.
I have no choice.
Ever. You have so many great personal interests. What inspires you as a person as you evolve in this world?
As far as my job of ambassador of France to the United States is concerned, what animates me is very much what you said before, Jean-Charles, about the history. And I like very much to be where we find also signs of our past friendship, because those events, those friendships of the past are the best tokens and the best guarantees for our friendship and of cooperation in the future. So for me, to visit places like Yorktown, which I did a couple of months ago with my wife, as I mentioned to you, but many other places mean very much, and I am very much. I find moving when in San Francisco, for instance, you see some places still documenting the French migrants which arrived in the middle of the 19th century, and not to mention all our compatriots who settled in the Napa Valley, of course, which is a more recent past. So the whole evolution of our cooperation, and to see how the future can be built upon this tradition, is something which really is important to me. But of course, I am, as I said at the beginning, I am happy to be as ambassador, to be able to be active in many fields at the same time, from business to culture, through security and defense cooperation. And I'm passionate with every aspect, but also to see how they are related one with the other, and how we can build a stronger partnership and friendship between the United States and France, facing the challenges of tomorrow. On a personal note, I like very much also, as you said, the nature. I like literature. So I have my hobbies like all of us, and I try to keep some time to devote with my family to this to these personal hobbies. But I'm so privileged to have a job which is in itself so rich, and so rich also in satisfactions, in problems, but also in satisfactions.
That's right. Well, you've outlined so well what inspires you. Would you be willing to share? What are you the most passionate, besides all what you've outlined, willing to share that what most of the people may not know about you?
Well, I said already very much. I should have kept some for this question. Um,
I know you're passionate about wine because I've had the pleasure
yes,
to witness that.
no, of course, but it's an obvious answer, not only because we are discussing with you, Jean-Charles, but also because of everything I mentioned about what wine represents for our relations, for our job as diplomat. So I would say that what really makes me passionate, and wine is a part of this, of course, is to associate the achievements we benefit from, and wines are magnificent achievements when you with the people who are behind that. And the wine is a good example because to create a good wine, it's a result of a long history of generations,
Yes.
and also of a both patient and really persistent and big job, and also of a quantity of knowledge which are really impressive. And this concentration, this combination of experience, of knowledge, of work, and of tradition, and it's really fascinating when you understand how a good product like a good wine is the result of an incredible amount of developments. So this is really why I am to give one answer to your question. If I would quote one word to describe a passion, I already mentioned it. It would be history.
Yes. And on that note, is there a dream that you're working on right now that you have not yet achieved that you are willing to share? Because
Well,
every ambassador has dreams.
yes. My dream would be to not to visit thoroughly, because the United Nations is such a big country, a large country, a rich country, rich in terms of culture. But I would like to visit all 50 states and to grasp something from each of those states. I probably I will not succeed in this because of COVID, and which has stopped us for more than 1 year, more or less, from which has prevented us from traveling. But my dream would be, one of my predecessors, and I would never compare myself with him because he is one of the most renowned writers in the French literature. He was ambassador in the United States in the 1920s and 1930s. His name is Paul Claudel, a
Oh,
poet,
yeah,
a
of
writer,
course.
and he was ambassador at the time of the Prohibition. And by the way, he wrote very much against Prohibition. And he's said to have traveled from one place to another in car. He didn't fly. He drove with his car, and he's said to have taken bottles of wines in his bonnet to because he wanted to take good wine even at the time of the prohibition, and he's said to have visited all Alliances Françaises. We have hundreds of Alliances Françaises throughout the United States. So I will never be like Paul Claudel, of course, neither like as a writer, but even as an ambassador. I don't pretend. I don't think I can make it. But I would like a bit like him, like he did. I like to travel. I would like to travel a lot to see a lot of places here in the United States, and to have a maybe, including through those activities related to wine, like I have done in California, but also in Virginia and in other states, some positive experiences of meeting people. For which is a good thing. We have no prohibition right now, so I have not to take with me my bottles of wine. I find everywhere a good wine.
Well, I was proposing to follow you in the car and be your wine cellar on wheels. You know, we share the same dream. I've had the pleasure to go in around 45 states. I'm missing 5. So,
Which ones? Which
well, I'm
ones are you?
missing Wyoming, North and South Dakota, and I believe 2 others, Alaska, and 1 more. So those are the ones I need to see at some stage.
But you are well ahead of me.
Well, but
I
it's a
am at
great
20.
dream. It's a great dream. Well, Our Excellence, I really want to thank you so much. Now, the last question, and remember, we have friends tonight all over the world that are with us and that will be watching you. So I'd love for us to conclude with a message you may have for all our friends who are viewing this wonderful interview of you, and as they can think of you or listen to an advice or thoughts you have for all of us.
Well, my message would be that we have all a common sense of purpose. We want the same things for our children, our grandchildren. We want to build a better world, and we want also to solve some very big issues we have mentioned, such as the climate challenge or others. So my message is that we give hands one to the other, and we cooperate together. And this means that our governments, especially our democracies, must work hand in hand, but also that we, in the civil societies, we have also to support this. And I think that as it has been the case with the Paris Climate Accord, now to reach something meaningful internationally means not only that governments work together, but also that the local governments, the NGOs, the business communities work together. So my message to all of your viewers, Jean-Charles, is that everybody has a role to play to reach the common goals for our common future.
Well, thank you so much, Our Excellence. And I could tell you, as I've had the pleasure to meet you in person, you've been so dynamic and active that it is a great honor and privilege to have been with you today and to know how dynamic you are on the behalf of all of us as well. What a great example.
Thank you, Jean-Charles, for having me. It's a pleasure also to work with people like you, and I thank you for everything you do also, and for also this live.
Thank you. And when we'll be in Washington, D.C., we'll be in person to have a toast next time.
Absolutely.
With your lovely wife, your family, and obviously all your great, wonderful collaboration and team. So
we are waiting for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.